Hello, my name is John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia. It's in the center of British Columbia, and it's something special today. In particular, we have Chief Dolleen Logan here, who is the chief of the Lheidli T'enneh. That is the nation of the Lheidli T'enneh, the unceded territory of the Lheidli T'enneh is in this region, and Prince George, and this area is part of it. Chief Logan.
Good morning.
Welcome. I'll call you Dolly.
Thank you. Yeah, you can call me Dolly. That's fine.
Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invite.
So, you're the chief of the Lheidli T'enneh and in this region. And I say a lot of times, I came here in 1965. And Prince George was a boom town, and it was kind of emerging as a city. A lot of new people moved to the region, but you and your nation have been here for a long, long time before that. Something like 9,000 years?
Over 9,000 years, yes.
That's a long time.
Yeah, we've been here for a while.
Yeah, and then the Lheidli T'enneh is interesting, the name, and it has something to do with the joining of the rivers of the Nechako and the river, of the Fraser River, right?
Exactly, yep.
So what does it mean?
It's just the people of the rivers, where the two rivers meet.
Right, and then the other thing that I kind of read about it is that the Fraser River was known, it had the deep undercurrent, and so yeah, and so that's where the Lheidli T'enneh was located. And tell us a little bit about the history going back, and how the different nations within the province of British Columbia, but throughout Canada for that matter, but focusing more on BC and in particular northern BC, there are a number of separate nations that are existing, and there is, and for our international visitors in particular, there is, British Columbia is a big province, right? So it's 1,800 kilometers from north to south and east to west virtually. How much interaction was there even in the past between the different nations?
There was a lot with our neighboring nations. Like where we're sitting right now is like IR number 1. This is where the original reserve was. Right. And it was known as a gathering place. So all the nations would come here to Prince George to gather, like first summer. We did trading for, like we had the berries, and some people had like the fish, and it was a gathering place for all nations to come. Right. And we're all related some way, because we have members married into other bands and other bands married into our bands. So we're all, like I have cousins in Lheidli. My grandmother's originally from Lheidli. My grandfather was here from Lheidli T'enneh. So there's a lot of interaction. Unfortunately, when during the colonial days, they split, and so they tried to how First Nations explained it to me is that the government is putting nation against a nation. Yeah. So if a lot of the bands around here were going through treaty and stuff, and then it's like you draw a line, this is your property, or like there's a lot of shared territories. Yeah. And so the governments would make them fight over that imaginary line. Right. And now, like we said no to the treaty twice. So it's been taking this long to 2022 that I'm working with the nations. We're all working together, and we want to both have say over our shared territories. So. Right.
So in all the years of history and since the colonization period, where the nations were discouraged, a lot of it was not ceded, neither is the Lheidli T'enneh. And only more recent in your time, my time too, but in particular your time, a lot of changes have taken place where fairly critical law had been passed nationally and internationally in terms of the rights and the recognition of First Nations. And I find it very interesting, and even in my more current, I was born in Holland and in 1940, and I came here when I was 24 to Prince George. So I've been here for nearly 60 years, but I also spent quite a bit of time around First Nations in different forms. I managed the sawmill, believe it or not, in Watson Lake, Yukon, and you know, all our employees were First Nations except one, that was the sawyer, but all the others were First Nations. And I had the sawmill there for 5 years, and then I would say I was the only one in you know, that was running a sawmill that far north in the Yukon Territory. A bit of a challenging area. It used to snow in July. You didn't know it was late or early, you know, so 62 below. And then actually in the next couple of weeks I'm going to do a keynote presentation in Telkwa to a number of First Nations, you know, that, so I've always had an interest in First Nations, in particular the history going back beyond what we consider to be our history here in Canada and BC and going beyond. But it's only more recent than anything else that all of a sudden all of that is starting to emerge more in terms of you know, being involved as a nation and being recognized as a nation, and negotiating in terms of real assets, in terms of a more recent one likely is allocation of timber rights, the sharing of revenues, and all of that still is somewhat emerging as we speak.
It's all new still. It's
and finally you're sitting across the table as equals, and beyond that as you know, being recognized as sitting like we are today, sitting in territory that is really Lheidli T'enneh, unceded territory, and proud of it, obviously. You know, so the other thing that always amazed me is that the languages of the different bands or the groupings, and I understand that carrier language is in certain areas, and I'm sure you will explain that to me in a way, and then does the individual, like I'm from Holland, there we speak High Dutch in most of Holland, and then I come out of an area that speaks dialect, and it's a form of, but not quite like. Is there anything like that in First Nations?
Yes, we call it the Duckhealth, but it's they're all really similar, really close. But there's some words, like you will say something and the elder will say, okay, that's from Fort St. James. Right. But it's pretty much all, we can all understand it. Right. All the languages, like all the way down to the States. It's all, it's pretty close to the same, but just a few little words.
How did that all, you know, if I look at the distances between them, it makes you wonder, you know, how over time all of that connection was made of the long distances in between the different bands all throughout.
Yeah, I don't know how it did, but there's, like, if you read the history on some of this stuff, you see the Chilcotin used to come up and war with the nations up here and take wives back and all this other stuff. So I imagine they all intertwined somehow, somewhere along the line, because
I think always what is very important, and again coming back to my own background, you know, that how do you preserve the past, and where there always seems to be, not always, but a lot of times, is that governments of different structures in different places trying to change things, you know, that will affect traditional things that have been there for a long time, and then the danger is there that history is being lost not only in terms of knowledge of what it was, but also in terms of very traditional interactions, maybe structures of government, if you wish, calling it that, or how do they manage the different groups, and you know, and then the other one is always so important, is the younger people. Do they get knowledge of the past, and do they still preserve the languages?
Some bands are extremely traditional, like extremely traditional. They can, it like, I have one band member who's married to someone in Morristown, and they've seated him in one of their houses, and he's been there for over 30 years or longer, and he's still learning the culture from that. So unfortunately, during residential schools and stuff, we lost it. Lheidli has lost it. We only have like 3 fluent speakers left. So what we're doing is we started an elders group. We're starting a youth group, because this is where we're going to save it. We're going to save it with the youth. The elders pass it on down to the youth. We have other nations, close nations that are. A couple years ago, we had an elders. We had invited all the elders from other nations to come and to talk with our elders, and it wasn't to teach them; it was to refresh them. So when they sat and they talked, you could see the little like, oh right, I remember doing that and stuff. So we're trying to bring our culture back, and the way we're going to do it is through the other nations, for reminding us, because some of them are extremely traditional, and it is going to take us a long time to learn this, but I think we'll do it.
It's critical, though, to preserve the past, right? So for those different natures in particular, and because you're now probably at the threshold where if you don't do it now, then it will just slip back further and further and further. So there has to be a point where, and that probably, and I'm comparing it to somewhat, you know, with I was brought up in northeastern Holland and spoke dialect and was proud of it, and still am today proud of it in terms of the dialect that, you know, I used to speak, and I try to speak it whenever I can. But, you know, to preserve that, I believe, is critically important.
It is. It's just really important. And, like, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my mom, when she raised me, my mom went to residential school. But her and her brothers and sisters and stuff, and my grandfather all talked our language. And so she taught us. So that's all I spoke was carrier until I was like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And my mom says, when you stop talking is when you went up to talk to your dad and you're just carrying on a conversation. And my dad just laughed at me. He goes, honey, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So my dad is Scottish Welsh from.
Yeah.
So he never picked it up. So.
No.
But they say it's easy to pick back up. And we've been doing the classes and stuff. And it's culturally very important.
Yeah.
Especially for the youth, to not only to belong to something, but to have the culture,
it's who
everything
you are.
There. It's who they are and who they strive to, because we have band members coming back, and they're just like, we need to know this, and then they're so thankful just they're like, from Vancouver, they're going, I feel like I belong to something now.
Yeah.
Right? So,
and being proud of it.
And being proud of it, oh yeah.
And that part of that is, you know, that finally getting to the stage where you're being recognized as, you know, as a nation, and that talking to government, although you're able to interact with government, if it is federal, provincial, or local for that matter, as a region, but as equals in terms of talking about issues that are critically important to you as a nation, and where you may be different in structure as they are to the rest of the different governments that are being formed all around it, you know.
That's just happened in the past few years, the recognition, and it has, our nation, our members are proud of where they are, or who they are, or where they come from, and they're so proud that we're finally getting acknowledged.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've been here forever.
Took a long time.
Took a very long time. And it's the city. The city has been amazing. We have a great relationship with the city. The city of Prince George, the regional district. And so we have these G2G meetings we meet. We call them G2Gs. So government to government. So we meet once a month. Which is so important. But now we're going to try and larger our group, because we're going to start possibly bringing in all our councils together with and maybe the MLA, Shirley Bond.
The council, all the other councils from the other groups in this area, First Nations in particular, or are you talking about?
Oh, I'm just talking about our G2G, just Lheidli T'enneh, the city, the regional district. So we'll all get together. But like we have Priscilla Mueller. We came and we had a meeting with Simon just last week. So, so we're all working together, because like this is the gathering place, and this is our shared place.
It still is that traditional. Uniquely, it is also, but I usually refer to it, you know, in my introductions, because we have a lot of people watching on our podcast, not only regionally, but provincially and federally and internationally. You know, we have thousands of people watching from all over the world. You know, that's the amazing thing about technology now, as you and me are sitting here, that we can have people watching on the other side of the world and seeing what we are talking about. And that's why I usually go out of my way to kind of try to find more details that are important to them that do not understand or do not know. And you know, that's why it's important to talk about it, and that then makes it more interesting. As you well know, Canada and the provinces, and especially our region and your region here together, you know, is so unique in terms of still so natural. Still having all the lakes and the amazing animals and all the things that we have here. We live in a very, very beautiful spot on Earth, actually, if you compare it to all the problems that are going on elsewhere. You know,
we do, and that's probably why you chose Prince George.
Right? Yeah,
it's beautiful, and we got, like you mentioned, the woodlot. This is important to us. Well, we have our own logging company. We took full ownership of it 2 years ago. So they're doing really well, but we have to, like you said, we've been here for 9,000 years. We've been looking after nature, and because of all the logging and all the stuff, our moose population has dwindled. Like, I do an analogy how before we used to, when I drive to work, you had to watch for moose. Now you have to watch for cars that are slamming on their brakes to take a picture of the moose, because you don't see them very often.
Right.
So we're doing the select logging in areas and stuff, and we want to replant and bring our moose population up. So so we are actually trying to be the actual stewards of our land again. Right? So.
And now, because of the allocation of the timber rights to that you know, that timber, it's not non-renewable, but it's yours, and for yours to manage, and that means being good stewards in terms of you know, and that has a number of other elements to it in terms of that. How do we increase the yield per hectare in terms of timber, but also how do we live in harmony, you know, with the other creatures that live there, because you can do both. It's not exclusive to one or the other. It's just a matter of saying, well, that's the reality. And again, that's a transition that is now taking place in the forest industry in terms of what will it look like. We know what it looked like in the past. We know what it looked like today. We are well aware of the fact that there are a lot of closures and shutdowns and all of the other kind of things. But then again, we have to collectively, that means governments, both federal, provincial, regional, including First Nations, look at where do we want to go from here and what does it look like. But we know one thing for sure, it will be different. And but nature has treated us well here collectively. Is that this territory in the interior of British Columbia has an ability of growing amazing fiber and timber because of climate, in spite of global warming and all the other things. This is probably one region compared to the rest of the world where the type of timber that we can grow here yields high quality products, and that's where the opportunities lie that I can see, so.
Yep, there are the opportunities. Well, and then we're, like I said, we're the stewards, so we can work with nature and industry, because we need industry. And then, so not only that, and then we got the load lot, so we know we're planning on how to manage that. And now we're working on a fish hatchery. Yeah. So there's the one here, but
right on River Road.
Right on River Road, and we're doing.
Is that still active? Are you involved in it?
No.
Meaning Lheidli T'enneh involved in that or not?
No, they come and met with us, and they told us their plans and stuff, and it's all volunteer basis, and they're doing an amazing.
They're doing a fantastic job.
Fantastic job, and the things that they have planned for the future.
Yeah.
Brink Storage is going to love it, because I guess they want to build a pond. Yeah. For catch and release, which was amazing because there's people who don't even get out of town to go to the lakes and stuff, even though we have so many around, right? Yeah. So we plan on doing our own fisheries. Our fisheries are putting in a fish hatchery because of the big bar slide that happened. There's no fish. There's no salmon. We haven't had salmon for 5 years. Yeah. Like we've had to get them from the coast. Yeah. First Nations buy fish from them to bring it in for our members.
Bring it back to. Yeah,
we haven't. Last year we were able to fish a little bit, but not as much. We didn't have enough for all our members. So this is what we're trying to do: is bring back our moose, manage the fiber in our, and the fish. Bring back the fisheries and stuff like this. Yeah, that's our traditions. Those are our traditional foods.
And so tell me a little bit about yourself. So you have your family, you have children, and tell me a little bit about them.
I have my husband. I have 2 children, and
a
boy and a girl, 4 grandchildren, 2 boys.
How old are they?
That's 16.
Approximately.
16, 13, 8, and 1.
Yeah.
So I have
beautiful.
2 and 2. So 2 of each, and they're so much fun. And my kids will kill me for saying this, but I always tell, my grandchildren, they're so much. If I knew they were this much fun, I would have had them first. And my kids, my son and daughter, going, Mom, and they're going, what? We're right here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So I was born and raised here in Prince George. Yeah. Just like my mother, my grandfather, my grandmothers. And it's from when I grew up here to now, the difference in society has changed. Yeah. It has changed. At our AGM, we had a discussion when they grew up on the reserve, and they said how hard it was for them. Yeah. Being First Nations, being bused into school and then bused home and stuff, and then I told them, I said, well, okay, our family, we lived on the Olsom Lake Road, up on the Hart Highway. I said, we had it harder. And they're like, well, how could you have had it harder? We were First Nations. And I said, well, I grew up being called an apple because I'm a half-breed. So I never got accepted by the whites. Yeah. And I never got accepted by the natives. Yeah. So other than a few really good friends. But
you didn't fit anywhere.
It didn't fit. No. Because, like they said, an apple, red on the outside, white on the inside. Yeah. So I said, and we started talking about racism and stuff, and I said, well, you know what, I have a grandmother I've never met. Yeah. On my dad's side, because she was so racist against Native people. Yeah. So, and I had an aunt I'd never met, I said, so but now, in 2023, there's always going to be racism everywhere.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as bad as it was. It was never. I hope it never gets back to that stage.
I don't think it ever will.
I don't think
it's not tolerated.
No, it's not tolerated
by anybody.
But it's still.
Yeah. No.
You're still going to get it. I'll give you an example. My granddaughter, she's extremely she's very, very light skinned. And she has the really light brown hair. And when they had the Shasti naming change, she was at school and stuff, and the kids just in this one particular class were just really bad, really, really bad. And she stood up and she says, "What is wrong with First Nations?"
Yeah.
And then these kids just started saying that. She goes, "Well, I take offense to that because I'm First Nations."
Yeah.
And she just happened to have her status card there, and so she whipped it out and she goes, "What is your problem with it?"
Yeah.
And she shut them down because she's a really smart kid. Like,
I think it's for us as adults to make sure that we don't tolerate that. In a company we employ normally, in my company about 400 people. We just don't tolerate it as a company. It's not tolerated.
Yeah,
any form.
It's not even just it's to everybody, all the First Nations, not the First Nations. There's and the Chinese and the Hindu and the Sikh. They get just as much as we do. Yeah. And it's just like the CN or somebody has a cultural room, and they phoned me and they asked me, okay, it's the First Nations cultural room. And I'm like, okay, you know what? It's a very safe place for kids to go, but they welcome everybody. I said, you shouldn't be calling it First Nations. Yeah. If you call it First Nations, then I said, okay, can you please change the name to the First Nations Multicultural Center? Yeah. For everybody.
And it always has been, really. And you know, so like from our perspective, we not only, as it relates to First Nations or people that have a different skin tone, but it relates to maybe traditional sexual preferences, whatever it is, we judge them on the basis of who they are. And we will not tolerate anything else in the company, period. At any time, and that's always been my position, and always will be my position. But I think we're making gradual headway, but we still got sometimes a little bit of a way to go, and some people are so ignorant that they simply are not teachable. Well, but in most cases, I think we've come a long way.
We've come a very long way. That's what I mean, from the time I was a child to the time now. Yeah. Like, I've never looked down. Well, my mom, she was, like I said, she was in residential school, so I used to walk all the time with my head down. Yeah. And she refused. She'd like just flick up. No, you don't bow your head to nobody. Exactly. So that's now.
Be proud of who you are.
Yeah. So
at all times.
This is Prince George has totally changed. Like, I feel I've always been comfortable walking around town. Everyone's always said good morning to me or hi or So it's just
and so it should be. So the other thing that I want to talk about a little bit about politics, inside of the First Nations in particular, is that but I've always found, and I've always had close relationship with with the First Nations in wherever I was, but especially in Lheidli T'enneh, is because we were working around them and with them in a lot of cases, is that I never quite fully understood why they, and I'm not being critical, but just an observation. I think yesterday I had Shirley Bond, is a good friend and has been in politics now for 22 years. When she got elected, I ran against her, actually. Oh. Yeah. But we're still friends.
Oh, that's good. You're still friends.
And it's not like a war like it is in the States. It's very respectful. But I'm glad that she was successful and has been an amazing. She puts in an amazing effort in representing all of the region here and beyond. So we're very lucky to have her, not only as a region and as a province, but also as a province. But I see at Lheidli T'enneh, and maybe that's the same as other ones, they have elections every year. Yeah, so by the time you get used to where respectfully, is you move into the government house, but that may hypothetically, and you barely figure out where to hang your coat and where the washroom is, and then it's an election again.
Yes.
Why is that? But that always has been that way. That's probably the answer. Yeah.
INAC. It's the federal government has put it in. I don't. They put it back in 1865 or something. Whatever. That's when it's just every 2 years.
It's just not very.
No, it's not very fair. But we can move. We're moving towards the custom elections, so we can do every 4 years. But it was INAC that put that in place, and it's funny you bring that up because we are in election mode right now. Like our elections are April 11th, and it is.
So when is the election?
April 11th.
Oh yeah. So you're running?
Yes,
again?
I'm running again. So
yeah, and I hope you're the only one.
Oh no, there's 4 of them. But it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
But every 2 years. So it's when I first got in as chief, I'd be meeting big companies and stuff, and they bring in their proposals and stuff that we agreed. So I'd just be like, I'd walk into the meeting and introduce myself, and I told them, look, I don't like a whole pile of political talk. I said, to me, it's a waste of. I'm here. I have 2 years. I have 2 years to plan for 50 years. Yeah. So let's get this done.
Yeah.
Like and they're just they get kind of shocked and go, what?
Yeah.
And then we had asked them. One time we were meeting with this one proponent, and we asked him a question, and it was like a great big. By the time he was done, I said, you know what, that was an amazing political answer, but you didn't answer our question. Please be blunt.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So this is what we have to do. We have not even 2 years. We have a year and a half to plan for 50. Every chief that comes in, we got to look 50 years up the road to the future. Because
and that is a good policy because that's really the long-term path has to be clear, right? So you don't go all over the place.
Yeah. So it's been fun and interesting. So I'm the second female chief elected in Lheidli T'enneh history. So
right.
And it's been interesting. It's been fun.
Yeah.
And it's old school. We still meet with very old school way people, and we're like we had a previous chief. We're going to meetings, and I had to let them know. I said, look, when you go into meetings, this does not work.
Yeah.
It's like you're there to have a conversation. You're not there to bully. You're not there to stuff.
Intimidate and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we had a meeting with another First Nations came in, and that ex-chief came in, and he's talking. He goes, I realized pounding on the table is not working. No. Like, and I'm just like, me personally, I was going, yes, like he's learning. You're learning, right? This is how it is and how we have to build relationships. And election time is a crazy time, but we'll work towards a custom code. So
the membership of the Lheidli T'enneh is about 400 people?
We grew. We grew. Yeah. We're up to 720.
So that's a good thing, right?
Yes.
So I read that in some of the documents that were then not updated. But so how many people vote? Is there a voting age?
Yes, it's 18 and over, and it's we have over 460 voting members.
Okay.
So, and it's not just on reserve, it's everybody, so.
Yeah.
So we have members, we have about 100 members living on reserve, about 200 in Prince George.
Off reserve.
Yeah, off reserve, and we have them we have one in Hawaii, we have one in Arizona,
They're still voting members.
Yep. And Alberta,
what makes them voting members is their heritage and they are registered as officially Lheidli T'enneh.
Yes. Yeah. They are registered as on the INAC list.
Yeah, and therefore able to vote.
Yes, once they're 18, so they'll be able to do mail-in ballots or whatever they do.
So how long, so the election is going to be, did you say the 11th of April?
Yes, 11th of April.
And then how long does it take before you have the votes?
That night.
That night?
Yep.
Yeah, so fairly quickly.
So they do the lands count, and then they do.
And is it by just out of curiosity? And since you have four others, you said 5 altogether then?
Oh, 4 running altogether.
Four. So then is the winner that has the most votes, or is the one that has 50% or more?
More votes. The most votes wins.
Yeah.
And they do the count that night.
Yeah.
So the polls close at 8 o'clock, and that's when they start the count.
So you're pretty optimistic?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Gotta remain positive.
I like that. Okay. That then being said, and then looking forward, especially in the more recent period, and having been here for nearly 60 years and watched it fairly carefully, and particularly in the last 10, 15 years, a lot has changed in terms of interaction between First Nations and other governments. So that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And then particularly in the last couple of years, we've seen more changes in terms of the government policy of the intentions paper 2 years ago, and saying that should be more involvement, direct involvement, not just talking about it, between First Nations and industry. The obviously forest policy has now been changed, where they participate in revenue, as well as in access or owning timber rights to manage. And so that's a very, very interesting area to move forward. The way I've been very active in is that I'm a secondary manufacturer of lumber. We're not primary manufacturers, so we add value. How can we add more value? Although we have no timber rights at all, and I've been in business for nearly 50 years. Started with 3 employees, $25,000 in a bank loan, and then kind of built it up to probably being the largest secondary manufacturer, in Canada for sure. And going beyond that is that there are immense opportunities in further manufacturing, not making the same old spaghetti, 2x6, 2x8, blah, 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 and all the same spaghetti, and I hope somebody will buy it. And if they don't buy it, well then we'll close down the mill. We have to go beyond that. We have to do more with it. What else can we do with it? But how can we add more social and economic value? And how do we... so that has been pretty much what I've been involved in. I mean, a pretty lonely battle, I must admit, but I'm still there. And, one of the main challenges that I've had, and I've always said that, I think it was probably, time goes so quick, that always been very active and proactive in trades. The biggest challenge that I've had, I was not very successful in school, academic. I failed grade 3. Nobody fails grade 3. I did. And then I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, okay, what are we going to do with this guy in Holland? And my parents were beautiful individuals. They said, well, we either have to send him to the mentally challenged school, or we have to get him a job. So they got me a job training me as a furniture maker. So I became a furniture maker. And then I worked in the lumber industry already when I was 14 in Holland. But we were northeastern Holland, pretty rough, the 5 years of war. And my mother had 3 kids. My dad had been, was in the Dutch army that were defeated fairly quickly by the Germans. And the last time they saw him was in early 1940, when Rotterdam was bombed, and he did not know if he was dead or alive for 5 years. And then my mother had 3 kids. I was born in November 1940, and then my sister was 1 year older, my brother 2 years older. And it was tough going. It was, and tough for her. And in particular, from the when I was 3.5, I still remember planes overhead, hundreds of them, bombing Germany at that time, day and nighttime bombing. But in the middle of the night, we would stand outside on the flat roof, not because we wanted to look at the planes, but it felt safer to be outside than inside. And then the winter of 44, 45, but the hunger winter. And, you know, and a lot of kids died, in particular old people died. And we as kids would go, and early in the morning we would go with gunny sacks to the or to the railroad yards to pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did it as kids is that they would not shoot us, but they would boot us one in the back, you know, and then we'd be back the following day. And I still remember, you know, the feeling the hunger, even still now, the memory stays with you. And the cold, extremely cold in Holland for that time of the year, where there was nothing to eat, and we had a little part of the house, you know, parched off, where we could sit around there and, you know, and try to stay warm in the immense cold. And then the anxiety from feeling the stress of the parent. And, you know, so it was a tough go. But we were liberated by the Canadians, April the 12th, 1945. I always remember it because I said from that point forward, I was so impressed by it. I would, not if, but when, I would go to Canada, to the land of my heroes. And I wanted to go when I was 17, but they drafted me into the Air Force, and then I finally was able to go when I was 24. But I was so impressed with the lumber that I knew that someday I would build my own lumber mill in Canada. That's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to start with no money, right from the bottom up, because I had not been successful in school. And I had worked in Holland is saying that you want to get a job somewhere, and then saying, okay, where are your diplomas? Well, I had no diplomas, you know, so, and so I felt I had kind of failed, and I had to start all over again. And I did that in the land of my dreams. So I arrived here in Prince George, July 1965, on the Greyhound station was there. It's the old Greyhound station is still there. I came off the bus down there and I looked around, and I had a suitcase, I had 3 books, I had 2 sets of clothes, and then I counted my money twice. I had $25.47. And I was going to build a lumber mill, you know, and then, but what I did have is attitude, passion, work ethic. Attitude being avoid the negative. I still do that today. And then passion is I just love what I do, and I'm always an optimist, and the glass is always half full to me, not half empty. And I knew this would become the land of my dreams, and I started as cleaner man, lumber pilot, and did all that other kind of stuff. Ended up in the Yukon, I told you that already. And then fairly quickly, you know, 10 years later, I started a company called Brink Forest Products. And now today, you know, we normally, not today necessarily, we have some people that are not working, but normally we employ about 400 people. And we want to double in size, and we will, you know, so. But I'm 82 and a half years old, so I'm a bit in a hurry. You know? And the other thing that I did, and I don't know if you have seen this, but have you seen this book?
Yes.
Yeah. Did I sign a copy for you?
Yes,
I sent it to
you.
Yeah. So what we did is that, against all odds, and this is not about hurrah, hurrah, how well John did. That's not about that. It's about, in spite of it all, you know, if you stay the course and you stay with it and you believe in it and you have the passion, you will succeed. You know, so, but you have to stay the course. You have to fall down and you have to get up, and you fall down, and that's what you do. And that's what this book is all about, and it's an inspiration. And then you've seen this one too.
Nope, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to get you this one. Saying, well, what is with ADHD? Well, I am a classic example. Hence, I was not good in school, you know. But that did not mean that I, you know, it really troubled me a lot of times, and I felt that I just was not good enough, and I had not succeeded because I failed in school, and it was not until I was 57, already here, that I walked in the bookstore on 4th Avenue. and I opened up a book down there and I looked in it, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction. And I thought, oh my God, that's me, ADHD. And that all of a sudden, and I was sitting there and reading the book, and the guy said, gonna buy it or what? You know, so, and obviously I bought it and then wrote in there, now I find, in Dutch, I did, because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And then, you know, it took me, probably after I knew that, it took me 5 years before I even talked to my own doctor. That was a friend of mine, delivered my 2 daughters in that Monday I'm going to introduce. And he was a friend of mine. I walked into his office, he said, hey John, why are you here? And I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we talked about it and did all those kind of things. And yeah, I have ADHD. And then the last 5-10 years ago, I started talking about it more and more and more and more publicly. I was very honored by getting an honorary Doctors of Laws award from UNBC. Did a presentation there, talked more about, not only about, but PTSD from the war years, the inner child, you know, of the fear of, got counseling for that. When I was nearly 60 years old. And about ADHD. And became more vocal about it and talking about it more and more. And then I found I had to write a book about it. So that's what I did. That is this one, and has become very popular. And there is virtually not a day that goes by that I don't now encounter people that say, you know something, I have it too. Or somebody in my family has it. Or somebody that I know, more and more and more and more. That's why it is so important for me, this book. And not only as it goes to, and I will sign one for you, I want you to, I'm not going to charge you for it, but you find this interesting. Can you tell me how much this book cost in the store?
All the same price. $25.47.
Neat, eh? Yeah. So anyway, but this book is important, that this is meant for people that are challenged with the conventional accepted way of teaching. You put somebody in school for 4 years and you make them, feed them all kinds of stuff they are not interested in, and just not. Those are not people only that are affected or benefited by, I say. I call it a superpower, ADHD. There's no question about it. I couldn't have done all the things that I did if it were not for ADHD. But this book also is important for those that are affected by trauma. And that's why I said it's important for First Nations as well, to, so we will give you as many copies as you want, you know, and reading about that. And it's affected by attention, you know, problems, and sitting in the structured way of teaching as we do. And by coincidence, I encountered a fellow, you know, that, you know, I was flying from Victoria to Vancouver. We have a place in North Saanich. I go there on the weekends. Actually, I go there at 2 o'clock today, and then spend the weekends there, and then come back. And my wife is there, and we have horses and do all of that kind of stuff. It gets me kind of a change. Anyway, so a fellow was sitting next to me, and he said, "You remember me?" I said, "I kind of do, but I don't know for sure." He said, "Well, my name's Tom Romer." And we talked, and then the more I talked to him in this short flight, 12 minutes or whatever it is, you know, from, you know, that Tom Romer is the vice president of academics at British Columbia Institute for Technology. And so then I had talked to him that I was doing this book, and then I told him about this one. And this one I was in the final stages of completing, and then I felt something was missing still. And right now we are actually at the same point, because we are getting another book that's coming out in July, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. The book is just on the final stages of completion. I'll get you a copy of it when it gets out in July. And it's a very strict process, because you have to have the book penned ready within days of where you make a commitment. Otherwise, it will go a year later. Anyway, so I was at that stage, so it was virtually, but there was still something missing. And what we talked about is in particular about, you know, the teaching. And he was working on a project. And then again, I saw him in the plane a couple of weeks later, and he was sitting on 1F or something like that, and I was sitting on 3. The plane was full, and I saw him there. I said, Tom, wait for me when you get out, you know, off the plane, because I have to talk to you. So, and I talked to him, and then again told him about this book here, and talking in particular micro certification, meaning that if you go for a trade of some form or fashion, focus on the center, most important part of it, so you don't build 4 years around it, and then focus on that first, and then add other things if you need it and when you need it. So that changes the whole process of education. And I think that's very important for people with ADHD or those that are affected by other issues, in particular trauma and other things that has them not being able to work in the normal setting. And but ADHD in particular, but also as it affects trauma, does that, you know, that should not stop you from building any career or but the main thing is to get mentally feeling that, yeah, you're equal to, no worse than, and the opportunities all are yours. That's why this book is so important. And that's why I'm going to sign one for you. I'm going to do that right now.
So education is really important for Clayton, for our nation.
Yeah.
And we have student awards once a year.
Okay.
And we used to have it for those like the straight A's, those who never missed a day of school and all this other stuff. So we took that away. We took it away. It's just a education celebration. So it's just there to celebrate that they made it to school. Yeah. That they went to school. And we get our other students that have done something come back to school and talk about their challenges that they had when they were going through school and stuff. And they used to put the bar up really high. Oh, you guys should grow up to be doctors and lawyers and all this other stuff. And we took that away, and we told them, no, you can be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
Like if you want to be a waitress, you really like the job, we're here to support you.
Yeah.
This is you.
That's where the next book comes in, finding your passion.
Yep.
Living the dream. Because whatever that may be, you want to be a cleanup person, that's fine, you know, and you love what you're doing, then you're finally doing what you would like to do. Or do you want to be a corporate executive or whatever you want to do? It's all available. And so that's why I speak about those things a lot, like I will do a keynote presentation at Telqua to a number of nations. One of the things, they still don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about. They presume probably it's all about lumber. It will be partially about that, and opportunities that are there with the changing circumstances where timber belongs now to First Nations, and they should look at other opportunities going forward. What else can they do with it? But the other part about it is about this, in terms of, you know, and wherever the opportunity presents itself, I speak to groups, First Nations, or to kids and in schools and all those things. So anytime you think of somebody.
That's good, because I was thinking, I already talked to a few people that have done very well for themselves, and I said, I need you to come talk to our youth.
Yeah.
Because they see him as, oh, he's just a rich person, he's done this. And I'm like, no. I asked that person, I said, can you come to one of our events or whatever? We'll put something together for our kids to say, yes, I do have this, and I do have this. I have this many horses, like the horses thing, like I have horses and stuff. But I said, I want you to go up there and I want you to be real. I said, I want you to be real, to tell them how hard it was to start your business, how you tripped and you were tears coming down, but you dusted yourself off and you moved forward.
Exactly. So how many books you want, we'll make sure you get them. So just let us know, let Scott know, and you know, but I'm going to give you this one. And then if you want more of them, and I'm sure you would, then you get them from us for free, you know, so. And the same as this one here, you know, it's, you know, to have it available is important. Anything else comes to mind in your mind before we?
No, it's just that we're all coming together, and you talk about First Nations coming together and stuff. I had I'll give you a quick story. A previous chief of ours, he come in and he says, well, you got it about this other nation. He's like doing this. And I said, well, we already have a relationship. We went for lunch. We had our communities, our communities are getting together. And he's going, well, how'd you do that? And I said, well, and he goes, is it a female chief over there? And I went, yeah, it is. And he goes, oh, females. He goes, women. And he goes, because I had a meeting with Chief Lee and stuff, and we're talking about how men are protectors, and they've always been the protector, and they draw a line in the sand. You can't cross this line, where females are get rid of that line, get together, right?
Exactly.
So there's a lot more female chiefs, so it's made it.
And you can see that already through the world, right?
Yep.
There are a lot more times now, you know, that you know, females are in leadership positions. And are no less than being equal, you know, under all circumstances. In fact, for all the reasons that you said, men sometimes seem to be like this, where women more from a natural perspective, but also because they are bright and have the ability to be good, solid leaders. And the key is, you know, is laying out and going forward, and especially now where Lheidli T'enneh is under your leadership in particular, is saying this is the door that has been opened finally, and so where do we go from here becomes extremely critical. And to involve discussions with other people in terms of that have been successful in industry selectively. There's a lot of people also that take opportunity, you know, and we saw that there was a period, you know, where timber was being made available in the 90s. I was quite involved in that in terms of getting a program that created a small business program, and that would be short-term licenses, and you know, and that just became an area where larger companies kind of secured their timber and then created businesses that really had no sustainable future, and most of them are gone now. So that should not happen again. It's you know, so I think it's very important for people like yourself and other nations, and hence my presentation in Telkwa would be on saying, where do you go from here? What should it look like? And who do you involve yourself with, not financially, but more in terms of understanding where the opportunities lie. And I'm certainly available even to Lheidli T'enneh and to yourself, you know, in their future in terms of where I think it lays. The interesting part about me is that I'm sometimes controversial in the industry, but I'm still the vice chair of COFI somehow. I have no timber rights. I'm the only one sitting around that whole table that has no tenure, but I'm the vice chair. I'm the longest serving director, for all the reasons that you said, because I believe I'm a person of reasons and reasonableness, not confrontation, and then looking forward as to the key now is to not so much as to where we are today. From a leadership perspective, we have to look at where will we be 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, in terms of, in particular as it relates to forest policy, and what should it be like. And that's the key, and that's the opportunity for First Nations, in my opinion, but also for the rest of the industry. It's not a question of saying all of a sudden the economic thing doesn't work, and then we got pine beetle, and we got this, that, and so on. So we take all our money, we invest it elsewhere, but we keep the timber rights. That doesn't work. The people will not tolerate that. So from here on in, but also during a period of adversity, as I'm sure you understand as well, there are opportunities. And I believe it is now a time for opportunity, in my mind.
I agree. The world is open, and it's going to be
so we'll stay in close.
Busy. Yeah. We definitely will. Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind?
Not really. No? I think we covered it all.
I wish you luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for having me here.